Welcome to the YouTube channel. My name is Brock Ashby. I'm an online personal trainer based in Australia, coaching people all around the world. And today I want to break down why when personal trainers say eat less and move more, why it gets under my skin and why it's not really the best advice to most people and how we can actually take that advice and make it useful. So eat less and move more sounds pretty self-explanatory. Eat less calories, move more. And that's what people will say, or personal trainers will say, fitness experts will say. When someone comes to them and says, how do I lose weight? I'm not losing weight. I'm stuck in a plateau. And then they'll come in and just be like, hey, have you tried eating less and moving more? So let's break down what it actually means. Eating less, eat less food. And that can be done by doing a ton of different things, right? But ultimately what you need to do is just reduce how many calories you're consuming, how much food you're putting in your gob. That could be reducing the number of meals. So instead of eating 5 meals, you could eat 4 meals. And without changing the size of those meals or the calorie number of those meals, that can be reducing your daily intake by anywhere between 300 to 500 calories if that's the size of your meals. You can do it by decreasing the portion sizes. So you could stay at 5 meals, but instead of having them 500 calories, they could be 400. So that's going to reduce your calorie intake that you have each day by 500 calories, for example. You could try to gravitate towards a more health-centric diet. And ultimately, that would just mean having less takeaways. So instead of having burgers for dinner, maybe you can make your own burgers at home, which have less calories in them, less, amazingly delicious ranch mayo. Instead of having that, maybe you can use cottage cheese, right? It's not the same. It's actually quite sad and pathetic. But sometimes that's what we have to do to reduce the amount of calories that we're consuming. And once you get used to it, it's not really a big deal. So you can make small changes like that. So kind of like diving away from eating out, processed foods. Not that there's anything wrong with the process of processing foods, but usually they come to be way more exciting to eat, way more tasty, packed with a lot more calories than would be if we created that food at home. And I'm talking as someone who doesn't cook. My wife cooks. So when she cooks at home, it's a much better option than me buying something out. And the last point of eating less food is something that I've already touched on, but just eating out less. The more we can prepare meals, the more we actually know what's in it, and the more we can make distinct changes to have less calories in them. So for example, instead of frying up vegetables, you could boil them and steam them. Yes, I know what you're saying. It's boring as hell. Yes, it tastes less exciting. But there is research to show that decreasing the palatability or how exciting your food tastes actually reduce how much calories you consume, because no one wants to eat something that tastes like shit, right? So I'm not saying you have to eat food that tastes disgusting, but if you turn down how exciting it is, instead of pouring it with sauces, mayo, ranch dressing, and all that kind of stuff, if you're just salt and peppering your food, maybe a sprinkle of mixed herbs, I'm no chef, but that can taste okay. And if something tastes okay, you can still eat it, you can still get the job done. It doesn't really make that inner like demon come out and just make you want to eat everything in sight because everything's so saucy, so delicious, you just want to keep eating it. Now, eating less can also mean drinking less drinks that have calories in them. So, for example, calories from lattes, maybe you can turn that down a bit. Maybe you don't get as much sugar in your coffee. Maybe you go from a latte to a long black. Maybe, just maybe, I'm not trying to take away your milk. Maybe it's going to Starbucks less and having, whatever coffeeado they make. I don't know what it is, a macchiato. Dan, do you know what they're called? Or those drinks from Starbucks that are just like iced lattes. There's burnt caramel latte, pumpkin spice latte. They're not coffees. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not coffees. They are just a shitload of calories, really. That's what they are. And you drink them, you don't really feel like you've consumed a meal, but you've actually eaten like a meal's worth of calories, and it's just a Starbucks drink. So cutting stuff out like that, orange juices, chocolate milks, full sugar Cokes, things like that. If you turn them down, that's a real easy way to bring down your amount of calories. Like if you have one of those fake ass coffees from Starbucks, but you don't have one, let's say you have one every day, pumpkin spice latte, whatever it is, and you stop having that, that's literally 300 to 500 calories down a day. That can be enough to get your fat loss moving. So this is what personal trainers mean when they say eat less. when they say move more, there's many kind of different ways to do that. But ultimately what it means is just bringing up your physical activity. So what this can mean is increasing your training frequency in the gym. So instead of training 3 days, you could train 4 days. Instead of 4, you could train 5. So bumping up your training days by 1 or 2 sessions per week. Another one is increasing your cardio routine. So maybe you go for a run every second day, you lift weights every second day. So now, instead of running every second day, you run every day. So that bumps up your physical activity by bumping up your cardio. Or instead of running 5Ks every day, you run 6Ks every day. There's, a ton of different examples, but ultimately it's just increasing how much you move. And lastly, it could be just increasing your daily physical activity, like your steps. So if you get 8,000 steps a day, now you try to shoot for 10,000 steps a day. This sort of stuff can really bump up your physical activity to increase the amount of calories that you burn. So the old eat less, move more works by ultimately making you eat less and burn more calories, which increases the calorie deficit that we're trying to create or that we need to create to drop body fat. So the reason I kind of don't like this advice is it's just so broad and so general. It's like if someone said to you and you went out to them and you're like, hey man, like I'm just trying to get rich. I'm trying to make more money. How do I do it? And he's just turns around and goes, spend less and save more. And just walks away. You're like, oh, thanks, man. That really helps. Right? It's a true statement, but it doesn't help anybody. Everyone knows that. So if you're trying to lose fat, everyone knows you probably need to eat less food, drink less calories. You probably need to be more physically active. But we already know that. So this video is trying to give you a detailed outline on how to actually do it. So if someone says eat less and move more to you and it works, this would be why it works or kind of when it works. So when you have a lot of weight to lose, if someone says eat less and move more, it's broad, but if you have a lot of weight to lose, it's easier to lose the body fat. So if you just make these kind of small changes here and there, maybe you're not tracking your calories, you don't really know how active you are, how many days you train, it's just a bit in the gray area. But if you just slowly eat a bit less, slowly move a bit more, you put on your walking shoes a bit more, and instead of going straight to work, you do a little 15-minute walk with your dog and then you go to work. These little things are going to actually work for you, but it's because, to lose your first 5 kilos, it's much, much easier to lose your last 5 kilos because you have more weight to lose in general. So it also works when you make dramatic changes to your nutrition. So more on the extreme end of things. So maybe you eat 2,000 calories a day. You're like, someone told me to eat less, I'm eating 1,000 calories a day. Of course that's going to work because you've made such a dramatic change. You're dropping your calories by 1,000 per day. Or going keto, going carnivore, starting to do intermittent fasting or alternate day fasting. These types of changes to your diet are very extreme and they cause big changes in calorie intake. So if you're not usually keto, but you do go keto, you may feel super, super full. So you're probably going to eat less, you're going to drop weight. So when you make a dramatic change and do something extreme, often it's usually going to work in the short term. Another reason it may work is when you make dramatic changes once again, but to your training. So adding a run every day, a cycle every day, a swim every day, when you previously weren't doing that. Or starting to cycle to work instead of catching the bus. Adding in 45 minutes on the Stairmaster after your workout when you didn't used to do that. So if you just get this massive wave of motivation and just ride it out and just start moving a ton more, of course that's going to work, once again, in the short term. It also works when your calories are tracked. And this is the kind of best case scenario. So if you know that you're in a weight loss plateau, but you've been tracking your calories every single day. You know that you've been, eating 2,500 calories. If someone says eat less and you think about it really pragmatically and you go, okay, I've been eating 2,500, I'm going to go down to 2,200. That's exactly what I want to hear. I want to hear that you're making this small calorie deficit that's going to pay dividends and make you lose weight over time and not affect your energy levels too much. So that's when it's going to work, when it's calculated. It's also going to work when your TDEE or your total daily energy expenditure or maintenance calories is known. So if you know, once again, that your maintenance calories are 3,000 calories, 2,500 calories, you should know the necessary changes that you need to make in order to create a calorie deficit from that. Now, here's when it doesn't work. And I would say this is probably most of the case when you're unaware of how many calories you eat. Most people do not track their calories. They're unaware of how many calories they consume. So if you're unaware of how much you're eating and someone says, hey man, like just eat less, you don't even know what eating less means because you don't even know what you consume. So to come back to when it does work, when your calories are tracked, you need to be tracking your calories so you know how much to actually eat less. If you just say eat less, like you don't really know where to start. So once again, to come back to that finance analogy, if someone says just like spend less and save more, but you don't even know how much you're spending or how much you're saving, or even if you're saving per week, you don't know what changes to make. You don't know if you should spend $500 less or spend $50 less to make a difference to your situation. It also doesn't work when you don't know your maintenance calories, once again, your TDEE, and it doesn't work when you don't know how to eat less or move more. So this is coming back to someone who literally knows nothing about fitness. If you're a complete beginner, you're like, mate, eating less or moving more, it sounds cool. It sounds like I can get on board, but I don't actually know what to do. Do I eat less meals? Do I eat less food? Do I eat less vegetables? Do I eat less meat? Do I eat less days? Do I just eat Monday to Saturday and then take Sunday off? Like, what do I do? If you don't know the answers to those questions, like, I would recommend getting a coach because you're in a real beginner pool. And if you just Google shit, man, you're going to start chasing your tail and not really making any progress. You'll probably end up doing keto and going for a run every day, training 17 times per week and running yourself into a hole. So get a coach if you're in that situation where you literally don't know what eat less or move more means. If you've heard this advice before, eat less, move more, but it hasn't worked, then here's what you need to do if you're not losing weight to begin losing weight. Number one, establish what your TDEE or maintenance calories are. And that can be done by a simple algorithm, formula. I have a calorie calculator that tells you that. So if you want to use that, the link's in the description. If you want to use someone else's, that's completely cool. But you need to find out what your maintenance calories are so you can establish how many calories you need to eat to just stay the same. So it calculates your height, your age, your weight, your sex, your physical activity level. And it kind of goes, all right, for how tall you are, how much you weigh, for what sex you are, for like the amount of mass that you are and how much it moves, this is how many calories you need per day to stay the same. Let's say it's 2,500. You're like, okay, cool. You've got that. That's the first thing. Now you need to create that calorie deficit. Now, anything under 2,500 should be weight loss for you. So if your maintenance is 2,500 calories, you need to pull those calories down to 2,200 to 2,000 calories in that mark, and that's going to be a good calorie deficit for you to actually get things going. Now, once you've established that kind of calorie deficit, now you need to start tracking your calories to know where you stand. And maybe you hit 3,000 calories in that day. Don't worry about it. Don't panic. Yes, you've been eating way above your maintenance. That's why you're not losing weight, maybe even gaining weight. But now you know what changes you need to make. You need to pull your calories down by around 800 to 1,000 calories. So instead of having 3 sandwiches, maybe you can have 1. Instead of eating dinner out every night, you can start cooking, preparing food, and having it at home, and that can reduce your calorie intake by 300 calories. So make these kind of necessary changes to bring your calories down. That's literally the only way. You can't just like willpower yourself into fat loss by eating too many calories. You're not that important. You can't overcome the law of thermodynamics. If you eat too much food, you can't just be like, please let me lose fat. Hope is not a strategy, all right? It doesn't work. So make changes accordingly as you go along. And the last point I'll say is weigh yourself every 1 to 2 days for 2 weeks. And that's going to, so I say every 1 to 2 days because that gives you a frequency. It gives you enough data points throughout the week to kind of eliminate any fluctuations. If you only weigh yourself twice in 2 weeks, you could fluctuate one day and then take your weight and be like, shit, I'm not losing weight. But if you weighed every second day, maybe you'd see that was actually a spike. So the more times we weigh ourselves, the more we see these fluctuations if they do happen, and we can acknowledge them and go, hey, I just weighed more that day for some reason. Maybe I had a high carb dinner. Maybe I was retaining more water. It's completely cool because the next day it dropped even more so. So make sure you weigh yourself frequently so you see the trends and trajectories that happen. So if you do that over 2 weeks and you see that your weight still hasn't changed, you need to bring your calories even lower. So you need to eat less. Or you can turn up the movement by moving more. So maybe you go from 10,000 steps a day to to 11 to 12,000 steps per day. And that's going to bring up your physical activity. So that is when the eat less, move more model is actually going to work. So to summarize this video, ultimately, eat less, move more works. It's actually great advice if it's followed up by some specific moves. So if it's like, look, you need to bump up your steps by 2,000 per day, reduce your calorie intake by 200 calories per day, and that's going to put you back on the path to fat loss. Then eat less, move more works. But if someone just says, hey mate, like I'm not losing weight, I've tried this now, I don't know what to do, and you just go eat less, move more, like, man, that, anyone could say that. That's not great advice. That's not specific enough. That's not enough data. That's not enough kind of practical advice to actually really, be good advice to my ears and to my knowledge. So if you are struggling with that, take this advice on board. It can really help. The takeaway from this video is literally to track your calories, track your total daily energy expenditure, know where you sit, and then make changes accordingly. The more specific and strategic you can get with your approach, the more successful you're going to be. The less bro you can be, the more you're going to get results. So hopefully this helps. If you want another video like this and you enjoyed this content, I have more educational, no BS content over here. This is a video that YouTube thinks that you're going to love. And yeah, subscribe if you're not, drop a comment if you liked it, message me if you want to tell me something. I don't know what you want to say. Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye.